Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We have a big show for you today. We are going to be going over all four major American sports. Uh, in this show, we're going to start in the NBA, going over the action from last night, the incredible game between the Heat and the 76ers. Transition into the NFL in the second segment, talking about minicamp players that are missing the voluntary minicamp for their team and what that might mean for their future. In the third segment, we are going to do MLB power rankings, just like we did last week, go over that and why I have certain teams at certain positions. And we're going to finish off our show with the big news coming out of the NHL, as their last game of the season is today. We'll go over NHL playoffs tomorrow. But today there's even bigger news, so we're going to go over all of that in today's show. But before we get into it, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. It'll scroll across the bottom of the screen there for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. We appreciate anything that you do give, and we appreciate you guys for watching. Once again, you can control the show. All you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, that link on the screen right now, and leave a tip or donation. But like I was saying, we have a lot to cover, so we're just going to jump right into it. We're going to start with the NBA, the games that took place yesterday. There were some intriguing storylines to come out of this as we set up for the final play-in matchups coming up tomorrow, and the playoffs starting right around the corner. The Eastern Conference play-ins were last night, and we're going to start off in the Heat 76ers game, an incredible game to watch. Two of the top teams in the East going head-to-head for the right to play the New York Knicks in the first round of the playoffs, going for that 7th seed. The Philadelphia 76ers are able to outlast the Miami Heat. They win by 1 point, 105-104. There was a little bit of iffy clock management down the stretch of the game from the Miami Heat, but it was still an incredible game to watch. The Sixers led by Joel Embiid, 23, 5, and 15. Nicholas Batum was huge for them down the stretch. He had 17 points in the second half, 6 of 10 from 3. He was making clutch shot after clutch shot after clutch shot. Tyler Hero paced the Heat in scoring, 25, 9, and 2. Near double-double, 9 assists, 25 points. He had a really huge game, very important, keeping the Heat in it, even when Bam Adebayo or Jimmy Butler were struggling a little bit. Not that they had bad games. Bam had a double-double, 12 points, 10 rebounds. Jimmy Butler had 19 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, 5 steals. But Jimmy Butler was injured at the end of the first quarter. He ended up finishing the game. He played 41 minutes in this game. About 30 of them were done on a sprained MCL. So he's going to be out for at least a couple weeks, which sets up for a really interesting scenario as they are going in to play their next game against the Bulls tomorrow. Jimmy Butler, obviously the main star of that team, especially when it comes to playoff time. Everyone knows that Jimmy Butler can kind of send them into a little bit of a higher gear. Jimmy Butler has that ability to take control of a game and push them to their limits, push them past it. He got hurt in this game, and that is a tough blow for a Miami Heat team that made it to the title game last year in a very similar situation. Now they're going to have to go in a play and win an elimination game without Jimmy Butler. Granted, it is against the Bulls, and I do believe that they will be able to pull this out, even after the Bulls' performance last night, which we'll talk about in a second. It is against the Bulls, but once we get into a situation where they have to go and play against the Boston Celtics, assuming that they beat the Bulls, it is going to be near impossible for them to win that series without Jimmy Butler. And Jimmy Butler is going to be out for at least a couple weeks. So I don't know exactly what the timetable is, but we're not seeing Jimmy Butler for the first round of the playoffs. There's a chance he'll come back for the second. I don't see the Heat advancing without him. I think they could still give the Celtics a good series, but it's going to be a lot tougher to really go deep into that series without Jimmy Butler. And it's such a shame because it's so much fun to watch Jimmy Butler in the playoff. It feels like he saves up for these moments. He saves up to show up in the big time, show up and play big when he needs to. And we're not going to be able to see that this season. Not to say that this Heat squad can't do it. We talked about the other contributors. Bam Adebayo, 12 and 10. He had a really, really solid game against a tough matchup in Joel Embiid. It's always tough when those two go against each other. You had Tyler Hero, clutch shooting from the outside. Jaime Jaquez had some really great contributions off the bench for the Heat. It was a really good team effort for them. Like I said, clock management near the end. They were down by 4 with about 10 seconds. They passed the ball a little bit too much and got the best shot they could, but it ended up taking too much time. And that's a situation where you just have to put up a semi-contested shot at that point. But this Heat team is gonna go and play a Bulls team that just absolutely dominated the Hawks. Kobe White goes for a career high 42 points, 15 of 21 shooting from the field. So incredibly efficient, almost 80% from the field, 80% from the field. Incredible efficiency from Kobe White in a monster game, nearly a triple-double, 42, 6, and 9. Outduels the Hawks. DeJounte Murray, who goes 36 and 7. Trae Young put up 22 points, 10 assists. The Bulls just were the hotter team. That's really what it came down to. The Bulls shot 56% from the field and 42% from 3, while the Hawks were shooting a much lower percentage from 3 especially, leading to a 15-point Bulls victory as the Hawks just aren't able to get past. Like I said, I don't think this is going to matter too much. The Bulls are moving on to play the Heat on Friday. The Heat are without Jimmy Butler, but I think they'll be able to handle the Bulls just fine without him. The Heat are 13 and 9 this season without him. They are 7 and 7 when going against top 6 seeds in either conference. So that doesn't include teams like the Bulls or the Hawks or Warriors or the Lakers or stuff like that. But top 6 seeds, they're 7 and 7 against them. 13 and 9 on the season. So against teams like the Bulls, they are 4 and 2. So positive record. I do believe that they will be able to handle the Bulls just fine on Friday night. But again, going up against that stacked Celtics starting 5, that stacked Celtics roster, even though the Heat have been kind of a thorn in the side of the Celtics for quite some time, is going to be really, really tough without Jimmy Butler in the lineup to help them out. But with the Sixers win, and I don't... excuse me. With the Sixers win, and I don't want to, understate anything, they played a great game. Nicholas Batum, like I said, huge points for them, huge shooting down the stretch. Joel Embiid was dominant in the post. He didn't have, his typical 30-point scoring night, but he still put up 23 points. Tyrese Maxey, valuable asset. Kelly Oubre hit huge shots down the stretch to help extend that lead and keep the Sixers ahead. Hit a huge clutch free throw to extend the lead to 2 possessions, which ultimately ended the game for the 76ers. And now they move, and they are the 7 seed, and they are playing the Julius Randle-less Knicks in the first round of the playoffs. So they're going to go to Madison Square Garden, and they're going to go play the Knicks for the first round. We go and we look at the season series. It isn't the greatest between these two teams when we're talking about a 76ers perspective. The Knicks are 3-1 this season when they play the 76ers. They're 1-0 with Embiid on the floor, but in that game they did have Julius Randle and OG Anunoby. OG Anunoby, who I think could play maybe the biggest factor in this series. The Knicks are 20-3 on the year when he plays and when he's healthy. And every sign that I've seen goes to him being ready to go 100%, no minutes restrictions or anything like that. Really what this comes down to is whoever can control the inside. And with, Joel Embiid down there being such a physical force and not having Julius Randle to battle him, it's going to be a lot harder for the Knicks. Now, I do think that the Knicks, with OG Anunoby, their defense is going to be able to at least extend this series for quite some time. I have this series going 7. like I was saying yesterday, I think whoever won that Heat 76ers game probably has, in my opinion, is the favorite to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics, most likely. Uh, the Sixers ended up doing it. It's going to be a tough physical series. The Knicks are a really good team. They're a 2 seed for a reason. Jalen Brunson is having himself a year. Like I said, you're getting OG Anunoby back. His defense, his shooting, it helped them to have one of the best defenses in the league when they were fully healthy. And the Knicks are a very scary team when they're fully healthy. But you get into the playoffs, you get a healthy Joel Embiid going against you, and you don't have that Julius Randle presence on the inside to go up against him and slow him down, make him pass it out to the shooters on the outside to let OG Anunoby and the rest of your company, rest of your team deal with the outside perimeter defense. It's going to be a lot tougher for the Knicks to win this series. I do have this 76ers Knicks series going to 7. And like I said, home court advantage is going to be really important. Madison Square Garden rocks. Philly, we know how Philly fans are. But I think Joel Embiid, that star factor, is just going to be too much on the inside for the Knicks to deal with. Now, the Knicks have a really, really, really good defense, especially with OG Anunoby. But losing Julius Randle in this matchup is probably the one guy that they need. Now, if the Heat had won this, I think, especially without Jimmy Butler, the Knicks end up winning the series. But the Heat don't end up winning. It's probably a better matchup for the Knicks if the Heat win. We're getting a good matchup either way. But I do think that at the end of the day, the 76ers just match up. Again, inside, they're going to dominate in the paint. I think that's the most important part of the series because both of these teams can shoot it. And both of these teams, or at least the Knicks, have a very, very good defense. The Sixers have a more average defense, but they have a better offense from what I can see, from what I'm looking at. Joel Embiid is just a monster, and there's no one that can stop him. So for that reason, I'm taking the Sixers in 7, breaking the Knicks' heart. The Knicks are a very good team. If they can stay healthy, they can bring this roster back. Talked about a little bit about this about a week ago, I think. Julius Randle comes back. There's not that many expiring contracts, at least in the sense of their major players. You run it back next year, you're healthy, they could be a serious threat out of the East. But that's besides the point. In our next segment coming up, we are going to transition out of the NBA, continue our tour around the 4 major American sports. We're going to go to the NFL. Voluntary minicamp started for a whole bunch of teams on Monday, and there's been some major players that did not show. We're going to talk about the implications of them not showing up, why they won't show up, and if it's going to help their goals or hurt them in the long run. So stick around for that. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Thank you for sticking with me through that break. If you were just tuning in, we just finished breaking down the NBA action from last night, including a thrilling game between the Heat and the 76ers that ended with a 1-point victory for Joel Embiid and the 76ers, and also a devastating injury for the Miami Heat as they go into an elimination game tomorrow against the Chicago Bulls without their star, Jimmy Butler, who sprained his MCL in the first quarter and played the whole game on it. In this segment coming up here, we are going to talk a little bit about the NFL and their mini camps, their voluntary mini camps. They started this week for a whole bunch of teams, and there were a couple big stars that declined to show up. Now, again, this is voluntary, and we'll go over the implications of these guys not showing up, what they're looking to get out of it. Most of them want a new contract, but the media surrounding all of it and what it might look like in the future between these teams and their relationships with the players. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen. We'll have a little discussion about what you had to say. You can control what we talk about on the show. All you need to do is leave that message with your donation at the link on the screen, gsmcpodcast.net. We'll have a discussion. Appreciate everything that you do give. Appreciate all of you guys for watching. And once again, please leave a tip or donation at that link on the screen right now, gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we are going to talk about NFL voluntary camp. There's a whole bunch of huge name players that decided not to show at the beginning of the week or not to show at all. We'll talk about the biggest names, what the effect of these players not showing up. Most of them are trying to get new contracts. If it's going to work, maybe they'll get traded. There's lots of reasons why they didn't show up, but we're just going to start off with the biggest team, the Dallas Cowboys. They had two of their biggest stars not show for voluntary camp. One on the offense, one on the defense. That being CeeDee Lamb, Pro Bowl wide receiver, and all-pro defensive player Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb are both up for contract soon. Both of them are looking to get market resetting money, and I fully expect both of them to get it. Although it is going to be a little tough to pay both of them at the same time, I don't see a future with the Dallas Cowboys where both of those guys are not locked in long term, especially the way that Jerry likes to run things. They will finagle their way through the salary cap, make it so that they can get both of those guys signed, but they're not here. CeeDee Lamb, obviously, and most of the top wide receivers are looking for new money, including Justin Jefferson, including T. Higgins, including Jamar Chase. All these guys are looking for new contracts. They're all coming up soon, and all of them are waiting. They don't want to be that first domino to go. They want to be second. They want to get more money. They want to see what the market looks like before they go all in, and not showing up for minicamp shows some leverage, saying, hey, we're serious about these contracts. Now, like I said, it is voluntary camp, so it doesn't really matter all that much that they're not showing up. They're not stepping on the necks too hard. They're just showing their hand a little bit, saying, hey, let's start talking about a contract. Let's start drawing the details up. My client would like some money. Let's see where the market's at. Let's see what we can get. And this is really all it is for a lot of these guys. There's some more questionable ones. I know Darius Slayton from the New York Giants, wide receiver, also did not show. He's looking for a new contract. This move doesn't quite carry the same amount of weight with him, because when you're talking in terms of wide receivers, Darius Slayton, comparing it to Justin Jefferson doing the same thing, one of them is going to have more weight behind their actions. Justin Jefferson is another guy that has skipped out on on the Vikings minicamp. Again, not a huge deal. There's some rumors swirling around him being traded. I would be shocked if the Vikings traded away Justin Jefferson. I fully expect them to get a deal. He'll get more money than whoever. I heard he was waiting on at least one other major receiver to get signed first. Like I said, there are a whole bunch of receivers that are out there waiting to get money, waiting in the wings for that first domino to fall, and it's a big question of who. I expect it to be CeeDee Lamb. I think the Cowboys are going to make sure he gets his money, make sure that he is happy in Dallas, because that offense run through him. You talk about a guy that was instrumental in their success last season. The running game just was not going too well for the Dallas Cowboys. Tony Pollard wasn't getting the job done. Dak Prescott had to get his guy, CeeDee Lamb, the ball constantly and often. Uh, it was a very impressive season for him. I believe he put up 1,500 plus yards. It was very impressive for what he did. He is going to get big money. And on the other side of the ball, I mean, we talk about Jerry Jones and the Cowboys all the time and how they love to do good by their own. You have Micah Parsons, who kind of started to become a controversial figure in the media, or at least surrounding off the football field. It's not like he's doing anything awful or anything wrong legally. It's just there are reports about his attitude being bad, reports saying, hey, he isn't being nice to fans, he's doesn't care, he's going off talent alone, which is scary because a guy like Micah Parsons, who is one of the most special talents in the entire NFL, if he's doing all of this not really trying, it's scary to think. It's along the same lines of Nikola Jokic in the NBA. You have a guy who is just the greatest, and he doesn't really care. Micah Parsons isn't quite the same. He clearly cares about football. He loves football, and he's very good at it. One of the most special defensive players I've seen in quite a long time. You can put him at almost every single position. He's even lined up as at corner sometimes, which is ridiculous. It's crazy how athletic of a guy he can be at his size, at his weight, his speed. All of it is almost unheard of. But these guys are missing out on minicamp. And again, draft is a week away at this point. It's not going to matter too much. I don't expect any of this to really do anything. I don't expect any of these guys to be traded. I don't expect any of these guys to have a contract done in the next couple days. But this just kind of gets the ball rolling. It kind of shows both sides, hey, we're here to negotiate. Let's get it done. Brings a public message out there, gives players a little bit of leverage. Hey, we did it once, we'll do it again later. Just give us the money we want, or we'll miss some time, whatever, we'll deal with the fines. So, very interesting to see the setup for the wide receiver market, really, because the wide receiver market is about to explode. You look at the wide receivers that are free agents coming up, and it's scary. You have, like I said, you have Justin Jefferson. You have CeeDee Lamb. You have all these guys that are coming up next. Calvin Ridley got huge money off of it. These guys are, we're looking at a whole bunch of huge names in that wide receiver market especially. And the defensive tackle market there's always one market that kind of explodes, right? And you have these huge names that are ready to go. Next season free agents, just off the top. Stephon Diggs, T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, DeAndre Hopkins, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk. This is going to be a crazy wide receiver class next season, and if I'm a team with some of those guys, I am making sure that I am paying them earlier rather than later, because that price tag is only going to go up. You pay a guy like Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, and Justin Jefferson are going to want more money. So on and so forth. The market is going to keep resetting, like we've kind of seen. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be a free agent next season. You see all these guys out here, and you saw with the defensive tackle market this season. It kept going and going and going and going, and there's so many defensive tackles that have been signed just this offseason, extensions to keep them happy, keep them in that same pay range. Big offseason for the defensive tackle position, and that's great for them. We love it when the defensive tackles, the big boys, get their money. But we're starting to see this happen more and more, where there's going to be a run on a position. And next year, it looks like it's going to be wide receiver. So if I'm one of these teams with a Justin Jefferson, with a Jamar Chase, with an Amon-Ra, with a CeeDee Lamb, I'm getting ahead of this. I'm giving them an extension right now before that market explodes. And once that first extension goes, it's going to go crazy. The entire wide receiver market. We're just waiting on that first domino to fall. And if I am a front office, I want to be that first domino. I want to know my guy is out, and I don't want to get in an arms race going higher and higher and higher. But that's what the players want. So the players are going to hold out as long as they can. It's a very interesting game of chicken when you're doing contracts, especially when you're looking at this looming tidal wave of huge contracts right over the horizon. You want to be on the top. You don't want to be the little wake. You want to be over here on the wave, the very top of it. But yeah, there are plenty of huge stuff coming up in the NFL. What's it called? The NFL draft is right around the corner. That is coming up next week. I'll have one more final mock draft for you the day of the NFL draft. So coming up next day, mock draft 3.0. Coming up next week, mock draft 3.0 with my final predictions and all that stuff, clearing all the smoke for you. But we are getting to the off season. The off season is in full swing. We're almost done. It's very, very exciting. In our next segment coming up, we are going to talk a little bit about baseball. We did power rankings, so we're doing our second version of the power rankings. This week's power rankings, the big risers, the big fallers. There were people that moved up 12, 11 spots. Some fell, some rose. We'll take a look at all of that and more. 14 spots down, everything like that, coming up in just a second on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we are continuing our tour around the four major American sports today. We've covered basketball with the action from last night, setting up a series with the 76ers and the Knicks, Jimmy Butler's injury, what that means for the Heat as they go to a win-or-go-home game against the Chicago Bulls for the right to play the Celtics in the first round of the playoffs without Jimmy Butler. In the second segment, which we just finished up, we talked about minicamps, the wide receiver market, the players that are missing, and what that what I expect that to happen as a result of that, and what the wide receiver market might look like next season. In this segment, like I said, we're doing a tour around the four major American sports. We're going to make a little pit stop in baseball and do our MLB power rankings for the week. Last week, we did it into tiers since it's early in the season. I've done away with the tier system, but we can still kind of do tiers. We'll take a look at the biggest risers, fallers, some of the teams that I'm most interested in seeing how they continue to develop. It is still early in the season, so we'll go through my power rankings. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. That link on the screen right there, it lets you leave a tip or donation for the show. We appreciate anything you do give. It'll be an option for you to leave a message. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else watching around the world to see. You can control what we talk about on the show. You have a question, leave it in the message. We will answer it. You can control a segment. comment, concern, anything you would like to say, all you need to do is go to the link on screen right now, gsmcpodcast.net, and leave that tip or donation. We appreciate anything that you do give, and we appreciate all of you for tuning in and listening however you may be listening. But like I was saying, our pit stop for the third segment is the MLB. We're going to go over MLB power rankings for this week, and we're just going to go ahead and start right at the bottom. Last week, my bottom team was the Oakland Athletics, and that has definitely changed a little bit. At the bottom, I have the Chicago White Sox. They were 29th last week. The White Sox have inarguably looked like the worst team in baseball. They have the least amount of wins. There is almost nothing positive going for them, and it's the same thing with a lot of the lower tier teams, especially the bottom three here in the power rankings. So the White Sox at 30, the Rockies and the Marlins I have at 29 and 28. Like I said, not a lot of positives for those teams. Injuries for those two. The Marlins got hit hard in the arms, which is where their strength was last season, propelling them to a wild card berth. The Rockies lose Chris Bryant for what feels like the millionth time, as he goes back on the IL after crashing into a wall. Not really a lot of positives going on for those two teams. So those three are my basement dwellers. We then get into the next tier, which consists of the Nationals and Athletics, which is just on the stairs to the basement. You know, they are down there, but there's a little bit of bright spot. Nationals have lots of young talent coming up. We saw the debut of Mitchell Parker against the Dodgers. He won that game. The Dodgers lost that series to the Nationals. They just beat the Dodgers in a series 2-1. They beat the Giants in a series. They did lose to the Athletics in a series, which is why I have the Athletics one spot ahead of them at 26. Although I do think the Nats have a more or have a brighter future in at least for this season. 25, we have the Cardinals. 24, we have the Angels. They did a little flip-flop from last week. Again, the Angels are being powered by a red-hot Mike Trout. Mike Trout looks like prime Mike Trout. He hasn't looked like this in years. It is very, very impressive to watch Mike Trout go to work this season. He is back being the lone soldier for Anaheim, for the Angels, and he does not want to go anywhere. This is his home. He wants them to win, and I hope that he can will them to victory, because Mike Trout is arguably the greatest baseball player of all time, and he's only been to one playoff game, one wild card game that they lost. Baseball gods need to give Mike Trout a ring, and he's not going anywhere to get it. The Angels need one. It would be so beautiful if he did get one, but he is powering them. Again, they don't have the greatest record, but he is doing everything in his power to keep this team relevant. Right above them, I have the Giants, who, after a really solid offseason, have had a slow start to the season. They got a lot of key free agents later, so it's not the greatest start to the season. I do believe they can turn it around. Blake Snell had his first start, and he got shelled. We had the beginnings of Matt Chapman at third. He's been doing just okay, nothing too special. There hasn't been any big improvements from these free agents that they brought in. So they're here at 23. The Twins at 22, again, have been dealing with injury. The Twins, as the Twins do. Carlos Correa dealing with injury. It sucks, because the Twins are a very good team. They have the ability to be very good. They have the ability to make some noise in the playoffs, but they're just not. They fall 8 spots from 14 to 22 in this last poll, and now we get to our biggest faller, the Astros. The Astros are currently last place in their division. Let that sink in. The Astros have a worse record than the Oakland Athletics, almost 20 games into the season, which again isn't that much, but the Astros are a proud team. They are on the border of a dynasty. They've at least been dominant for the last 10 plus years, making it to the ALCS, I believe, in 7 straight seasons or so. And now they are in the beginning of the season, last in their division, behind the Oakland Athletics, who are basically homeless already. It's not a good look. They turned their back on what got them here in analytics, and now they are going to, hey, this guy's good, let's go by feel. And that works sometimes. You have success like that when you're a stacked team like the Astros are, but why not go with what got you here? There's two ways to do it in baseball. Analytics are very helpful. I think you need to have a mix of both. You can't just go full analytics, but you need to have some kind of analytics. And the Astros have gone back into the Stone Age, for lack of a better term. They got rid of their analytic team, basically, and now they're starting to see why analytics are very important. I expect them to rebound. You still have Yordan Alvarez. You still have Jose Altuve. You still have Justin Verlander, who's coming back this week. You still have a very, very, very stacked roster, so I expect them to be able to bounce back. Tigers at 20, after their hot start, they've just kind of cooled down a bit, back to where they should be. Red Sox, Mets, and Mariners, I all kind of had grouped into one group. Right now I have Red Sox 19, Mets 18, Mariners 17, but I do think you could put any of those teams in any order, maybe even throw the Tigers and the Padres, which are flanking them at 20 and 16, in there. I think the Padres are a little bit better than those guys, but mix and match those teams. They're all very similar. They have some of their stars are struggling, or pitching is struggling, but I think a bunch of them can rebound. The Mets are kind of on a tear. They started 0-5. They have won 10 of their last 15. They've won 10 games since. They're like 10-3 in their last 13. So very impressive for them. They've won a bunch of tough competitive series. The Mets are the highest climbers out of this group. They go up 5. Like I said, the Padres also go up 5. They've just been solid all season. They still have the star power to carry them. Ahead of the Padres, now we get into the top half of the league. I've got the Reds at 15, the Diamondbacks at 14, and the Pirates at 13. Brewers at 12 as well. Again, another situation where I think a lot of those guys you can kind of mix and match. I have the Reds below them. I think they're slightly below the Diamondbacks. And the Pirates have just been on a tear lately. So that's why I have it like this. The Brewers 12, just ahead of the Pirates. Just have more stars. More star power is really what put them up here. We had the, biggest riser so far being the Pirates. They go from 22 to 13 in my rankings. And the Blue Jays at 11 go a little bit up. They just, again, that AL East is really solid. They've been really good. They're not competing at the top with the Yankees and the Orioles, but they're down here with the Rays, who I have at 10. I had them at 9 last week. The Blue Jays and the Rays, they're going to be battling for that last wild card spot, I believe, in the AL. And that's going to be a fun battle to watch. There's already a little bit of rivalry there since they're in the same division, and we're going to get to see them play a couple of really important games, especially down the stretch of the season. So now we're in the top 10. I said the Rays were at 10. The Royals I have at 9. They jump 11 spots from number 20, and they are right behind the Guardians, who I have at number 8. The Royals and the Guardians are half a game apart from each other. Guardians go up 10 spots. Royals go up 11. I really like both of these teams. I like the Royals pitching staff a whole lot. I'm a big, big fan of great pitchers. The Guardians, they lost Shane Bieber, which is a tough blow for a team like them, but they are playing just fine without him, which is kind of shocking. They've been able to rebound. Not sure how much longer they can, if they can sustain this level of play for the entire season, because the Royals are red hot. The Royals, I think, are going to end up taking that division. They are very good, but the Guardians, I have one spot above them. They do have that half-game advantage, and especially this early in the season when it's this close in my brain, I'm going to give that standings update. I'm going to give it to the standings to make that tiebreaker. So I have the Guardians at 8 and the Royals at 9. Number 7, I have the Cubs. Again, dealing with some injuries, but they've been really, really solid. They've given a fight to every single team that they've played. It's been a really, really good start to their season. And I was low on the Cubs. I didn't think they'd be able to repeat their success from last season, but they've been able to do it and more. Some of their young guys coming up have done very well to fill in. Phillies at 6. I have them flip-flopping with the Rangers, who I have at 5. I had it flip-flop before. The Rangers just really good. Phillies bats are there. If Trey Turner can start hitting, they will jump into that top tier, which, as we talked about last week, there's still those 4 top teams. You still have the Dodgers, Orioles, Yankees, and Braves at the top, and kind of everyone else below. You can kind of extend that second tier all the way down in my rankings to like 11 or so. So Rangers, Phillies, Cubs, Guardians, Royals, Rays, and Blue Jays. Those guys are all in that could break out kind of tier. And then the rest of them, all the way down to 25, are in these no man land territory where could go up, could go down. We're not really sure exactly how the season's going to go. Lots of different things could affect it. But as we get to that true contender tier, it's been the same all season. I still have the Orioles at 4. They're just slightly behind the powerhouses of the Dodgers, Yankees, and Braves. And that's not to say anything about them. You know, Jackson Holliday came up, and he's been really good. You have Jordan Westberg, who's been sensational this season. Kind of a little bit of a hidden, more under the radar name in Jordan Westbrook, but Westberg, excuse me. But he's been really, really good at that hot corner. So having him and having that whole lineup, they're only going to get better and better. They're the youngest team up here. I have them at 4 for now. They can climb. The Dodgers I have at 3. I thought about putting them down to 4 after they lost the series to the Nationals, especially with the way that the Nationals have been playing all year. But, that top core of hitters is there. The bottom part of their lineup is not getting it done. The pitching is injured, which was the major concern from last season. They have Tyler Glasnow now and Yoshi Yamamoto, but Bobby Miller got hurt. These guys, they need to improve. Walker Buehler's, they need to get healthier. I think improve is the wrong word. They need to get healthier. The Yankees are at 2, and the reason I don't have them at 1 is because Aaron Judge has been struggling a little bit, and the most impressive part is that hasn't mattered. If this was last season and Aaron Judge was performing the way he is right now, the Yankees would not be in contention. They would be really bad, as we saw last year. But adding Juan Soto has been huge. The pitching has been surprisingly solid, even without Garrett Cole. And that leaves the Braves at the top. Braves are the most complete team in baseball. They did lose Spencer Strider. And losing an ace in Spencer Strider is tough, because Spencer Strider is one of the best young pitchers in all of baseball. I wish him a speedy recovery, but the Braves starting rotation is good enough that they can survive without him. We go into a season with Chris Sale at 4, and the way he's been pitching, he now moves up into that 3 spot. You still have Charlie Morton. You still have Max Fried. This is a really, 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 really good Braves pitching staff, even without Spencer Strider. I expect them to still be my title favorites. They are still number 1 on my power rankings. I'd love to hear what you guys think about my list. Let me know in the comments below. If you have any questions about how I did it, I'll give you more explanation. But yeah, in our 4th and final segment coming up, we are going to finish up our tour around the 4 major American sports and take a quick pit stop at hockey. There's some major movement news in the NHL, something that's been a long time coming. We will go over all of that and more coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back, everybody, to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about my MLB Power Rankings. We're finishing our tour around the four major American sports, stopping in hockey, talking about the sale of the Arizona Coyotes and what that means for the future of hockey in Arizona. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, everybody else around the world to see. We'll have a little discussion about what you have to say. That's right, you can control what we talk about here on the show. You just need to leave that message in your tip or donation at gsmcpodcast.net, and you can control the topic of our show. Once again, we appreciate everything that you do give. We appreciate all of you guys for sticking around and watching. But let's finish out this show with some major breaking news out of hockey. This news broke just about 30 minutes before we went live on air. The Board of Governors officially approved the sale of the Arizona Coyotes to Ryan Smith. A little bit of a boring name out there, don't you think? But he's the owner of the Utah Jazz, and he has already said, or not officially, but he's already pretty much said that he is moving the Arizona Coyotes out of Arizona into Utah, Salt Lake City. He owns the Utah Jazz. Utah has a long history of supporting sports franchises. Hockey teams in specific. They've had the Salt Lake Golden Eagles. They've had two stints of the Utah Grizzlies. One of them active right now. One of them went to Cleveland to become the Cleveland Monsters. Both minor league teams, but you get a hockey town getting a hockey team, but you do pull a team out of a city, and it always stings for that city. It always sucks, especially when you go and you watch it. It's all over the internet. You can go find the announcer's final call in Arizona. I was watching that this morning. It was a really well done call. The announcer let the moment sit. The last 20 seconds or so of the game, he just sat in silence and let the crowd show their appreciation. It was a really beautiful moment. They got to send out the franchise on a high note, winning 5-2 against the Maple Leafs. Arizona has a very long and complicated history with hockey. You know, so much good has come out of having a hockey team down there in Arizona. You have a team there since 1996, so almost 30 years of hockey in the desert, and it's been a roller coaster. They haven't seen too much success. They did make a surprise run in 2012, and they made the bubble playoffs in 2020, but they haven't had a lot of success outside of those two years. Without the Coyotes, there most likely would not be Austin Matthews. Austin Matthews, the star, who got to see the last game in Arizona on the losing side for the Maple Leafs, probably would not be in the NHL today if it wasn't for Arizona having the Coyotes. And like I said, there's been a lot of good there, but it's been marred by lots of bad ownership, lots of shady business dealings. They don't have an arena. They're playing in Arizona State's 5,000-seat arena, and they can barely sell it out. It's a shame. Hockey can still come back to Arizona, and there's a passionate fan base down there. They just don't show up to the games because the team has consistently been bad and management has consistently been bad, and there's been rumors about them moving more times than I can count in just the last 5 years. You know, it's constant. Hockey doesn't belong in the desert. Hockey belongs in the desert. If you go and you watch how passionate the fans are, how much they love their team whenever there's discussion about teams moving, these guys come out in droves and they support their team. The Arizona Coyotes fan base is incredible. I've heard that when they go to Utah, they are going to do a new name. It's not going to be the Coyotes over there. There is a caveat. If Arizona can build an arena that's up to code in the NHL, you know, not play in the Arizona State University hockey rink, they can get an expansion team within the next 5 years. So hockey is not done in the desert. The NHL wants it to work. The fans want it to work. There's lots and lots of support down there for hockey down in the desert, and it's a good thing. Having hockey in Phoenix, I think, is very important as a major city. As hockey continues to grow as a sport, it's very important to have a lot of your bases covered. Hockey is a high barrier sport to get into. Equipment is expensive, especially if you live in the South or in a warm area where you're not getting frozen lakes. You have to go to expensive arenas. Sometimes you have to pay to get in. Camps are expensive. You have to learn a whole new form of movement. It's a very high bar to enter, and having more hockey in warm places, in places like Arizona, in places like Florida, in places like Texas, in places in the south of the U.S. is huge in growing the sport, and I think the NHL knows this. There's a whole untapped pool because hockey's such a fun sport. If hockey, you go and you watch hockey, it's undoubtedly entertaining. It's a brawl on ice. These huge guys are skating around with such finesse and power and speed, and it's a game unlike any other game in the U.S. We're used to big physical guys running around and being big and physical, but now you get to see these skill moves, and it's such a different game than anything we're used to in the U.S., and it's so important that we get this representation down there all across the country because hockey is fun, because hockey is exciting, because if you sit down and you watch a hockey game, you're intrigued because it's just entertaining. You don't need to understand. It's just entertaining to watch. And for those who have avoided hockey like the plague, I highly recommend you go watch it. Find a team to follow. It's a lot of fun, and if you don't understand it, you just see big guys running around shooting a puck at each other 100 miles an hour and crashing into each other against the boards, getting into fist fights. Even if you don't understand, it's still entertaining to watch. So it's heartbreaking anytime a team is moved. It's heartbreaking. It's also exciting. It starts a new era. Like I said, Salt Lake City, Utah in general, has a huge hockey fan base. It's cold there. They have a lot of sports fans, rabid sports fans. We see how they support the Jazz. They've been very good at supporting hockey teams in the past. Like I said, they've had multiple hockey teams before. They have a minor league team right now, and they support them very well. Utah is going to be a really good home, hopefully, for an NHL franchise, and I hope the best for the Arizona Coyotes. I hope the best for the hockey-loving community of Phoenix. I'm excited to see if Ryan Smith is going to get a new name or keep it as the Utah Coyotes. It's a big decision, a complete rebrand. It's happening immediately. The sale went through today. It got approved. They are going to move to Salt Lake City. They already have an arena. They're ready to go. They're going to start playing there as Utah next season. So they played their final game in Arizona. They're all done. And it's about time. The NHL needed to get pressured on Arizona to get a real facilities. As much as it sucks that they're leaving, it had to be done. The NHL clawed and scratched its way to stay in Arizona, but at the end of the day, it had to leave. It had to get out of there because this ownership group, I know they sold it and they were doing good by the team. They were building a new arena, but it just wasn't happening. The team went bankrupt a couple seasons ago. The NHL had to come in and support it, find a new buyer, and it didn't work out. That's not to say it can't. Like I said, they can still get an expansion team in the next 5 years. I don't know exactly how that would work because I don't know if the NHL really wants to expand to 34 teams. They've just added 2 new expansion teams in Vegas and Seattle, and if you add a new team down there in Phoenix, 33 teams, maybe you want to even it out. It kind of makes it a little lopsided in the West. You got more teams over there. You need to add a new Eastern Conference hub. Maybe you mess the divisions around a little bit. Maybe you get a team down in New Orleans. Not sure how much support is there, but you need to figure out a way to get these teams set up. But the Coyotes are officially moving to Utah. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend go watch the last call of the Arizona Coyotes in Arizona. It's very well done by the announcer. Wanted to shout him out here because it's hard. It's really easy to mess up moments like that. He let it breathe, and I want to give him his flowers for doing such a great job with that. It's always a tough time when a team leaves, but new era, exciting. Lots of good has come out of Arizona hockey, and I expect it eventually to be back. But anyway, tomorrow we are going to do a deep dive into the NHL playoffs. We're going to break down all the matchups, pick Stanley Cup, as well as going over the play-in games that'll happen in the NBA, and any other breaking news that happens for the rest of the day and tomorrow. Thank you everybody so much for sticking around and watching today's Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We'll be back here same time, same place tomorrow. Can't wait to see you then. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't